No one believed the first images. Not the reporters in New York, not the generals in the Pentagon, not even the astrophysicists who had predicted first contact decades too late. At 9:17 a.m. Eastern, the sky over Los Angeles fractured like glass. It began as a shimmer, a distortion in the blue, then split open into a vertical tear that pulsed with white light. The networks caught it live. CNN thought it was an atmospheric phenomenon, Fox called it a hoax. But when the first object emerged, metallic, smooth, impossibly large, every camera on Earth pivoted skyward. In the control room of NBC Los Angeles, senior producer Megan Holt leaned over her desk, eyes glued to the wall of monitors. "Keep it steady," she barked at the cameraman. "No cuts. Just roll." Outside, the object hovered. A dozen miles wide, shaped like a crescent, its surface shimmered with blue veins of light. Then, silence. Even the wind seemed to vanish. And then came the sound. A low-frequency hum rippled through every speaker, every frequency. Glass shattered. Car alarms screamed. The feed began to flicker as electromagnetic interference rippled through the airwaves. Megan's earpiece crackled. "Getting readings, Jesus, it's not static." Then came the beam. A column of white plasma, brighter than the sun, lanced downward into downtown Los Angeles. The broadcast camera shook violently, lens flare blooming across the frame, and then the city center imploded. The sound hit 3 seconds later, a deep, rolling detonation that split eardrums and shattered skyscrapers. Millions were watching live. In the next 5 minutes, the alien fleet struck 12 major cities: Los Angeles, Paris, Shanghai, Sao Paulo, Nairobi, Moscow, Karachi, and more. Entire grids went dark. The death toll counter at the bottom of news screens froze mid-digit as servers failed. By 10 a.m., 7 million humans were dead. At 10:04 a.m., inside NORAD Command, Colorado Springs, Colonel James Rourke stood before a room of stunned officers. The air reeked of ozone and sweat. Satellite feeds flickered across massive screens, infrared flashes where cities had been. "Are we sure this isn't orbital bombardment?" Rourke demanded. "No, sir," replied Major Elena Vasquez, pale-faced, headset clamped tight. "These aren't kinetic strikes. We're seeing controlled energy pulses. Directed emissions. It's deliberate precision. Targets? Population centers. Broadcast infrastructure. Major global networks." Rourke slammed a fist against the console. "They're killing us on camera." Half the world was offline by noon. But deep in an underground bunker beneath Arlington, a handful of media satellites still transmitted raw feeds through military channels. Megan Holt was among the last civilians allowed into the protected zone, brought in as part of a psychological operations team. Her job: coordinate communication, calm the remaining population, keep a face on the chaos. She hadn't slept. Her fingers trembled as she reviewed footage looped on the secure monitors. Frames of the first strike. Civilians vaporized mid-run. Whole blocks erased. "What's the point of showing this anymore?" she whispered. Colonel Rourke, standing beside her, didn't answer. His uniform was streaked with soot. He'd come straight from an evacuation site near Denver. "Because people need to remember," he said quietly. "When we hit back, they'll know why." She glanced at him. "If we can hit back." The next day brought silence. The alien ships hung motionless above the atmosphere, luminous and silent. They didn't transmit. Didn't move. Didn't acknowledge Earth at all. Scientists screamed into the void of space with radio frequencies. Linguists broadcast peace messages in 1,000 languages. Nothing returned. But Rourke wasn't waiting. By 0500 hours, the United States Strategic Command had activated Operation Black Echo, a coordinated offensive involving surviving air forces from the US, UK, India, and Japan. Their objective: probe the alien craft's defenses, gather telemetry, and, if possible, strike back. Megan watched from a dim-lit observation room as Rourke briefed the squadron leaders. His voice carried the cold conviction of a man who'd lost everything. 7 million, he said. That's not an act of war. That's extermination. You will not fail. You are Earth's voice now. At 0700, the first wave launched. Dozens of F-35s and orbital drones screamed into the stratosphere, their contrails slicing the dawn. Megan's hands clenched into fists as she watched the live feed, this time encrypted, military only. The first missiles streaked toward the hovering crescent. Impacts flared and vanished. The alien hull absorbed the strikes like ripples on water. Then, without warning, a lattice of blue energy radiated outward, engulfing the attacking craft. 6 jets disintegrated instantly. The rest veered off, engines howling, systems failing. Rourke slammed his headset to the table. Pull them out. Now. But one pilot didn't retreat. Captain Aaron Cole, call sign Razor, stayed on course, his jet screaming toward the alien vessel. Negative, Command, he said through static. You can't silence 7 million souls without hearing one scream back. He armed his payload in Dove. The explosion was blinding. For 3 seconds, the alien ship dimmed, its vanes flickered, light faltering. Then, for the first time, something fell. A fragment, metallic, glowing, tumbled through the atmosphere, burning bright over the Rockies. Cheers erupted in the command center. Rourke's jaw tightened. Get recovery teams on that debris. Now. Megan's eyes stayed locked on the screen. For the first time since the sky burned, there was something like hope. By nightfall, the world began to stir again. Emergency networks flickered back online. The death toll stabilized, horrific, but finite. Cities began digging survivors from the ashes. And deep in the command bunker, under armed guard and heavy containment, scientists began examining the fragment retrieved from the crash zone. It pulsed faintly with blue light, humming like a heartbeat. Dr. Samuel Greaves, chief Xenotech researcher, leaned over it. This isn't metal, he murmured. It's living circuitry. Megan stood nearby, exhausted, clutching her notepad. Living? Greaves looked up. Biotech fused with energy constructs. They're not machines, Ms. Holt. They're organisms. The fragment pulsed once, brighter. Then stopped. Outside, the alien ships remained still. No retaliation. No movement. Only the faint glow pulsing through their hulls, like distant stars watching from above. Rourke stared through the underground viewport, his reflection merging with the fading light. They wanted us to watch, he said softly. Now it's our turn. Megan turned to him. What do we do now? He met her eyes. We find out what they fear. And somewhere deep beneath the mountains, the fragment began to hum again, faint, rhythmic, like a signal calling home. The fragment wouldn't stop humming. It sat sealed inside a triple-layer containment vault 2 miles beneath NORAD command, a pulsating shard of alien biotech no bigger than a human torso. But the hum wasn't random. It came in steady bursts, measured, deliberate, like a pulse of thought transmitted through sound. At 2:40 hours, Dr. Samuel Greaves jolted awake in his lab chair. The hum had changed pitch. Run a spectrograph, he muttered to his assistant. Now. The readouts flickered to life. On screen, the signal formed patterns, repeating intervals at precise mathematical ratios. Jesus, whispered Greaves. It's language. By dawn, the command center was alive with noise, not from panic, but purpose. Colonel James Rourke strode through the chaos like a war ghost, uniform wrinkled, jaw set in granite determination. His every step echoed command. Megan Holt trailed him, camera drone hovering beside her. The footage she captured wasn't for the public anymore, it was for history. If there was a future, people needed to see the moment humanity decided to fight back. Tell me we have progress, Rourke snapped as he entered the lab. Greaves turned from the containment field. Depends how you define progress, Colonel. Try me. The fragment's transmitting. It's not just alive, it's trying to talk to something. We isolated subharmonics beneath the carrier wave. It's searching for a network. Rourke frowned. You mean it's calling home? Greaves nodded. Exactly. Then trace it. We can't, Greaves said quietly. Every time we intercept, the signal shifts frequencies faster than any human-made system can track. But there's more. The signal structure, it's neural. Like brainwaves. Megan blinked. Are you saying it's thinking? Greaves hesitated. Yes. And it's learning from us. By midday, every satellite still operational was listening. The alien fleet remained motionless above the atmosphere, silent and cold. But now the hum, the same harmonic vibration, was being detected globally. Subaudible. Underground. Through power lines. Through ocean cables. Something was spreading. At 1410 hours, reports began flooding into mass electronic interference, pacemakers malfunctioning, drones falling from the sky. The world's electromagnetic spectrum was being hijacked by an invisible pulse. In Washington, the president declared a full DEFCON 1 alert. Nuclear readiness. Global lockdown. Rourke's team barely had time to breathe before the next discovery hit. Colonel, said Vasquez, storming into the lab. Satellite IR just picked up a new heat signature. Underneath Greenland's ice shelf. Rourke turned sharply. Alien? Looks like a buried structure. Power output equivalent to a fusion reactor. It's pulsing in sync with the fragment. The room fell silent. Megan looked up from her notes. So the fleet wasn't just attacking. They were seeding something? Greaves nodded grimly. A command core, maybe. A hive. Whatever it is, it's awake. They called it Site Zero. By the next morning, a multinational task force, U.S. Marines, British SAS, and Arctic engineers, was deployed to the Greenland coordinates. Rourke led from the front, as always. Megan was embedded with his unit under restricted clearance, her press badge now little more than a memory. The C-17 transport cut through storm clouds and descended into the white void of the Arctic Circle. ETA 2 minutes, came the pilot's voice through the headset. Wind speed 30 knots. Temp -50. Rourke's breath fogged his visor as he checked his rifle. Across from him, Megan sat stiff, adrenaline making her hands tremble around the camera she refused to put down. Why'd you bring that thing? Rourke asked. Because if we die out there, she said, someone needs to know what it looked like when Earth finally fought back. He gave her a brief nod. Fair. They landed amid roaring wind and swirling snow. Below the ice, scanning drones picked up massive geometric shapes, smooth alien symmetry buried beneath centuries of frozen layers. It wasn't a crash site. It was a structure, deliberate and ancient. Rourke and his team descended into the ice tunnel dug by the engineers. The deeper they went, the louder the hum grew, a deep vibration felt more than heard. At 900 meters down, the tunnel opened into a cavern so large their floodlights couldn't reach the ceiling. The ice walls glowed faint blue. At the center stood a black monolith, not rock, not metal, a living column pulsing with the same rhythmic light as the fragment back at NORAD. Greaves' voice crackled through Rourke's comms from Colorado. Colonel, I'm reading resonant frequencies between that structure and the fragment. They're syncing. Be careful, we don't know what activating it will do. Copy, Rourke replied. We'll move slow. But the hum grew faster. Louder. The lights on the monolith flared. Megan raised her camera instinctively. It's responding to us. Then, voices. Whispers, layered over the hum. Not words, but echoes of thought, seeping into their minds. Images, stars, burning worlds, a fleet adrift through endless black. Rourke stumbled, clutching his head. What the hell? Greaves shouted over the comms. Colonel. It's transmitting psychic data, it's telepathic resonance. Pull your team out now. But it was too late. The monolith erupted with light. The ice exploded outward in concentric rings of blue energy. Megan's camera was torn from her grip as the blast hurled them back. When she opened her eyes, the cavern's ceiling was collapsing, but the monolith remained, untouched, floating. And from within it, shapes emerged. Figures of translucent energy, tall, slender, faceless. Not ships. Not drones. They were the aliens themselves. Back at NORAD, chaos erupted as every sensor lit up simultaneously. Dozens of energy readings spiked around the planet under oceans, deserts, mountains. Vasquez stared in horror at the data stream. They were never invading from space. They've been under us. Waiting. Greaves froze as realization hit. The ships in orbit, they weren't an army. They were beacons. They woke the ones already here. In the Greenland cavern, Rourke raised his rifle as the glowing figures advanced, silent and graceful. The hum in his skull turned to a voice, calm, emotionless, inside his mind. You broadcast your violence to the stars. We answered. Rourke gritted his teeth. You murdered millions. Correction, the voice replied. We silenced the noise that was killing your world. You will understand in time. Like hell we will, Rourke growled, and fired. The bullets passed through the figures harmlessly. But one of them flinched, just slightly, as if the gesture itself hurt. Megan crawled to the camera, recording everything, breath fogging. The lights intensified again, and she saw an energy core forming within the monolith, unstable and bright. Rourke, she screamed. It's going to blow. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed her arm and bolted toward the extraction tunnel. The monolith's pulse climbed into a deafening crescendo, cracking the ice above. They barely made it to the lift before the cavern imploded in blinding light. The shockwave tore through the glacier, but when it cleared, the monolith was gone. So were the alien figures. Hours later, as medics treated the survivors on the surface, Megan turned to Rourke. You heard that voice too, didn't you? He nodded slowly. Yeah. What did it mean? Rourke stared toward the horizon, where the aurora shimmered eerily across the frozen sky. I don't know, he said. But if they wanted to silence us, he looked down at the still humming recorder Megan had salvaged from her wrecked camera. We just learned how to talk back. Snow still fell over the Greenland ruins, whispering over the scorched ice where the monolith had vanished. But the world had changed in those few frozen hours. The alien hum had spread to every corner of the planet, through the air, through the ground, even through the bones of those who had stood too close. Colonel James Rourke hadn't slept since the blast. His hands still trembled from the shockwave, though he would never admit it. He stood before the battered transport plane as dawn broke over the ice. Megan Holt, camera slung across her shoulder, approached quietly. They pulled Dr. Greaves' team from NORAD, she said. They're calling it global contamination. The hum's inside every signal channel now. Every broadcast. Rourke looked up, his eyes red from exhaustion. Then it's not just sound anymore. It's control. She hesitated. Control? They're inside our systems. Using our own networks to finish what they started. First they silenced cities, now they're silencing thought. By noon, the hum was no longer something heard, it was felt. Entire populations reported migraines, hallucinations, and faint electrical burns. Governments fell into radio silence, afraid to transmit anything that might amplify the alien pulse. But in the bowels of Cheyenne Mountain, a new kind of war room had been born. Its lights flickered with low power, its walls were lined with analog maps and radio dials instead of screens. Technology was the enemy now. Greaves leaned over a cracked table, chalking equations across the steel. We've identified a pattern, he said, voice hoarse. Every time the hum peaks, there's a fractional delay between pulses, half a second at 19.3 Hz. If we invert that frequency and project it back, we might interrupt their neural link. Rourke folded his arms. A counter-signal? Greaves nodded. Exactly. Think of it as shouting over a whisper. Megan recorded, her camera battery jury-rigged to a car battery. And if it works? Then we turn their silence into static, Greaves said grimly. And if it doesn't? Rourke finished for him. Then we give Earth one hell of a final noise. They called it Project Thunderstrike. Within 24 hours, every surviving military base contributed what remained of their analog broadcasting gear, old Cold War transmitters, ship-mounted sonar arrays, even defunct AM radio towers. Humanity's last hope was built not from advanced tech, but from the relics of a noisier age. Megan watched as teams assembled the network, a spiderweb of human stubbornness stretching across continents. Every station would transmit the same inverted frequency at the same moment. The Earth itself would become the loudest speaker in the universe. "Rourke," she said quietly as he passed, "why you? Why fight this when everyone else is hiding underground?" He paused, running a hand over the scar at his jaw. "Because someone has to be the first to stop being afraid of the dark." At 0300 hours, the order came through, Thunderstrike, armed and standing by. Rourke stood at the central console, headset over one ear. The world's remaining generals crackled over shortwave, their voices warped by static. "Europe ready. Tokyo standing by. Houston green." Greaves raised his hand. "Power surge stable. On your mark, Colonel." Megan aimed her camera, every lens reflecting the dim red light. The air felt heavy, electric, charged with something older than courage. Rourke took a breath. "For 7 million voices they tried to silence," he said. "Let's give them the loudest echo they've ever heard." He hit the switch. The signal erupted across the globe. Deep in the Pacific, obsolete submarine cables vibrated like harp strings. In the Sahara, abandoned radio towers glowed faintly in the night. From deserts to city ruins, Earth's inverted hum climbed into the atmosphere, a defiant roar made of metal, dust, and grief. The alien ships in orbit flickered instantly. Their blue veins pulsed erratically, light stuttering like a heartbeat under strain. Inside NORAD, the alien fragment shrieked in a tone beyond human hearing. Monitors cracked, and the air trembled. "It's working," shouted Greaves. "Their neural fields collapsing." But then another sound. A deeper resonance rising beneath theirs, shaking the ground like thunder from the planet's core. "They're responding," Vasquez cried. "They're pushing back." Rourke gritted his teeth. "Then push harder." The frequencies collided in the sky, light bursting across the clouds like sheet lightning. Megan's camera whined from interference as she filmed the horizon, tearing open, waveforms visible, tangible, like shimmering glass breaking apart. And then, for the first time since the invasion began, silence. No hum. No static. No interference. The alien vessels above Earth flickered once, twice, and then shattered into cascading streams of light that disintegrated into the void. The transmission decks went dark. The sound was gone. Completely gone. 3 hours later, the sun rose over a quiet planet. Communications returned one by one, crackling radio, flickering power grids, the first hopeful chatter of survivors re-establishing contact. Megan walked outside the bunker, snow crunching under her boots. The air was still. For the first time in weeks, she could hear nothing but the wind. Greaves joined her, clutching his datapad. "It's over," he said softly. "They're gone." Rourke followed them out, face unreadable. "Dawn, or listening?" Greaves frowned. "You think they'll come back?" Rourke looked toward the horizon, where dawnlight kissed the icefields. "Maybe not soon. But they know now that Earth doesn't go quietly." Later, Megan set up her last camera, pointing it east as the light grew golden. Her hands no longer trembled. She pressed record and began to speak, her voice steady against the morning wind. "This is Megan Holt, former correspondent, United Network News. The date is March 12th. The silence is ours again. For every city burned, every life lost, we answered. Maybe we're still learning to speak to the stars, but now the stars know we can." She lowered the camera, watching the sun climb higher. Beside her, Rourke stood with his arms folded, eyes reflecting the light. "What'll you call this one?" he asked quietly. She smiled faintly. "The Day Earth Spoke Back." Rourke nodded, his expression caught somewhere between exhaustion and pride. "Let's hope they heard us." And as the last trace of alien life faded from the sky, the world exhaled for the first time, not in fear, but in peace.